Hey there, everybody, and welcome to another Age of Grogu. We had another trailer drop today for Book of Boba Fett, only 5 days out from this series actually dropping and airing. There is a specific scene I do want to talk about that they showed in this, and they didn't show a lot of new scenes, but there's one image, one visual that actually got me thinking about something that might tie into Book of Boba. So it's a potential spoiler. There is information out there in advance of what I'm about to go into, but it seems like it could be a plausible possibility. The scene happens to involve around this particular scene right here. And no, not the character riding the speeder bike, but the actual background. It was on Twitter this morning, and one of the people I follow at Clone Humor briefly commented on this particular scene right here just prior to this. It's a street that you see that seems to be pretty decimated and pretty destroyed. And we know there's a lot of blaster fire going on this particular street, but I don't see any blaster fire in this particular scene. In fact, it looks like a lot of damage, like physical damage to the actual street itself. And Clone Humor had picked up on that as well. And it got me thinking. So Clone Humor actually mentioned that the physical damage on the street could very well be have created by a Rancor monster. And how do we come to this conclusion? Well, way back in the early days of the rumors going around, one of the concept art pieces was a piece of concept art with Boba Fett riding a Rancor monster. Now, this was actually depicted by StarWars.net, and they actually ended up by doing a concept art of this particular scene, which happens to be a Rancor monster in the street, where Boba Fett is actually, tearing up the street, I'm guessing, or riding down the street. And of course, this is based off of a real piece of concept art that supposedly nobody has seen at this point. So this comes to a conclusion that we very well may end up by seeing this scene in the Book of Boba Fett, possibly in the first episode. How do I come to that conclusion? Well, let's go back to the Bad Batch. Way back in the day, Bad Batch was sent off on a mission to hunt down and search for a prize that was a bounty. The bounty was Muchi, who happens to be a Rancor, a baby Rancor. And who happens to be the one that tames this beast? Well, according to Tech in the series, Rancors do adhere to social hierarchy by challenging them. And that's exactly what Tech does. He ends up by challenging this beast and ends up by gaining the mutual respect in order for them to actually tame it, bring it back with them, and hand over the bounty. Who do they hand the bounty over to? Well, they handed it over to Bib Fortuna. This is way back in the early days of Jabba the Hutt. And we all kind of thought that Muchi might have grown up to have been the Rancor that actually died underneath the hands of Luke Skywalker. But what if this was not the same Rancor? What if Bib Fortuna actually ended up by having his own little set-aside Muchi Rancor monster and kept it on the side there, on the sidelines? So when we get through to Return of the Jedi, the time when Luke Skywalker comes face to face with the Rancor, which is Jabba the Hutt's Rancor monster, Luke, of course, ends up by killing it, leaving the Rancor pit completely open and empty. Soon after that moment, of course, we see Jabba get killed in the sail barge battle, and we know at that point in time that several years have passed when we catch up with Bib Fortuna again. It's obvious that Bib Fortuna somehow survived the Great Pit of Cocoon explosion from the sail barge and got his way back there. And we see that at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, where they introduce a very fat Bib Fortuna. So very soon after, Bib Fortuna is taken out by Boba Fett, and Boba Fett becomes the new ruler. Now, due to other trailers that we have seen of Book of Boba Fett, we do know that Boba ends up somewhere down in the catacombs in the early stages of him getting in there. We can tell this because Boba Fett is still scarred and he's got his gaffy stick. So this is still obviously pretty fresh and obviously a flashback scene. So I wondered during this time whether or not he came across the actual baby Rancor monster, which would be all grown up by now and now under Bib Fortuna's control in the Rancor pit. Now, Wrecker was a clone, and he was a clone, of course, of Jango Fett, the same way that Boba Fett is a clone of Jango Fett as well, which means that when Muchi went face to face with the Wrecker, there's a possibility the mutual respect and the actual social hierarchy followed through in the scent of Wrecker. And of course, Boba Fett, being a clone, would have the same scent that Wrecker would have. So what does this mean? It means that this Rancor monster would be definitely a bit more loyal to Boba Fett, being a clone. There's a possibility. It might be a little bit more controlled, just like a pet going away and not seeing its master for a long time and coming back years later and then being completely affectionate to its master. And so you could very well have the same situation here with Muchi under the thought process that Boba Fett, in fact, could be Wrecker and regain that immediate connection to Boba Fett himself. So we also know in the trailer Book of Boba that Boba Fett has some adversaries, and we're going to assume he's going to have to take care of some of these problems that are going on. With Boba Fett trying to control and actually take control of the mutual factions that are going on around the Tatooine area, we know at one point we get this particular scene here in one of the trailers where we see Boba and Fennec staring down at the Rancor pit. And we know there's got to be something in there. How do we know this? Because look at Fennec Shan's face. She's got this great smirk. It's like, we've got a plan, we're going to go after it, and we are going to actually, this could work as a way of being a deterrent to anybody that threatens them. It takes us back to this image again from StarWars.net, which is a concept art piece based off of a supposed art piece that shows the Rancor and Boba Fett controlling it down the street. We have a look at this image here, and could this very well be street damage from a Rancor monster? And if that's the case, did Boba Fett actually end up by proving his point? As for this young lady on the speeder, well, that could be another story. I meant another concept came up very funny, I have to admit. I laughed when I saw this. She could be Kia Mole from the Droids animated series, which is a possibility. Who knows? We'll find that out soon enough. Something to look at, something to consider. Anyway, that being the case, I do hope you like this little theory on what we might see in the opening sequences of Book of Boba Fett. I am looking very much excited to see in the series, as I'm sure you are as well. Please like and subscribe to this video, and we will be bringing video reactions to Book of Boba Fett in about 5 days' time. Thank you.